Students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian, and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here on the west coast of Canada. I hope everybody has had a fantastic week and is looking forward to an even better weekend, staying healthy, staying strong. Hi, Jat, Ayulak. Hi, Nisa, Jahan, Sachin, Ashisher. Welcome, Mylene, a new member. Good to see many students in the class. We are looking at an IELTS listening section in this class, specifically focusing on Part 3 and Part 4, especially looking at ways to comprehend these more challenging parts and answer the questions accurately. Welcome, Arda, and our other members. Thank you for your support. Good to see many of our regular students in the class. This lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS success. Check us out there. For the general IELTS, visit us at ieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of those websites, we have lots of materials, practice exams, HD lesson videos, strategies, for you to improve your English and your communication skills. This is our academic IELTS website here. We are an official British Council IELTS test registration center and certified agents, and you can click that big red button to join our premium package. It is a one-time payment for lifetime access. General IELTS, green background, gieltshelp.com. Click that big red button to join us there. We will be using the website in just a moment to play the audio for the listening sections. If you have questions, send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. And we've got 2 more classes tomorrow as well. Speaking Part 2 for members, speaking Part 3 for everyone. Okay, so yesterday we started this listening exam, and Part 1 was a nursery school registration, and then Part 2 was about a university campus tour. Remember that interesting looking building? And I showed you that very important strategy yesterday for the listening section, where you take a look at Part 3 and Part 4 topics before you get there during the introduction time. So yesterday, when we did this, we learned that Part 3 will be listening about the topic on taxes. Taxation. Okay, so when you look at the topics and you think about the topics, you should get some of the main or key ideas around these topics, because that's usually what the listening is about. So when we talk about taxes, what do you think about mostly? Okay, Mohammed Mustafa, yes, the listening is the same for academic as for general. Okay, so when you think about taxes, what comes to mind? What are kind of the main concepts that will come to mind? Yeah, listening and speaking sections are the same in the academic as the general. There's no difference at all. Okay. All right, so Doi Gyai says, taxes, you think about the government. Okay, sure. All right. What else? Arda says paying to the government. Yep. Rashika says maybe some different types of taxes. Okay. I'm a little bit surprised I haven't seen an idea here yet. Okay. All right. Mirzan says revenue tax. Yeah, very good. So different types of taxes, revenue tax. Okay, to help society or build society, right? So think about what taxes are used for as well. Okay, cool. So now you're on the right track, thinking about some different ideas around taxes. Okay, all right. So let's do this. Let's listen and
Battery 90%.
we'll get right into it, and then I will give you tips as we go along. So I'm just hopping over to our interactive website here. I'm logging into my student account. Once I'm in my student account, I see that I have my computer-based practice exams, full online academic course, IELTS exam workbook study plans, lesson videos, and I'm going to this one here, which is IELTS audio CDs. And this is coming from our third exam, so we're going to go to CD 3 and then track 3. Okay, so I'm playing this through my headset, nice Bose speaker. If it's quiet for you, please turn up your volume. Use a headset to be more comfortable, to listen better. Okay, that's what you will do in your IELTS exam as well. Do not put the answers in the chat. Put the answers separately, and then we will go through the answers together after. Okay. The reason I'm asking you not to put answers in the chat is so that everybody has a fair chance to answer on their own. Okay. All right. So here we go, everyone. Let's do this.
Now turn to section 3. Take some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Listening section 3. You will hear a public forum discussion between the moderator and two contributors, Dr. Philip McPhee and Dr. Ron Tatum, both political scientists at the local university, talking about the nature of taxes in society. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. McPhee and Dr. Tatum for taking time out of their busy lives to spend this evening with us.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. McPhee, could you give us a little bit of the history of taxation?
Certainly. Taxes have been around almost as long as civilization itself. There are records of taxes being collected by Egyptian pharaohs approximately 5,000 years ago. It was customary to give 20% of your production to the pharaoh, and those who evaded taxes were severely punished.
Dr. Tatum, what are the reasons for taxes?
Well, there are essentially three major reasons for taxes. The first and most obvious reason is revenue. Governments need money, and taxes fulfill this need. The government then spends this tax revenue on investments that are good for society, such as healthcare, schools and roads. Funding the army would fall under this category as well. The second reason for taxation is for the redistribution of wealth. In simpler terms, this means taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor. Many societies do this out of a belief that it is the responsibility of the government to look after the poor people in society. I'll let Dr. McPhee talk about the final reason for taxation, called repricing.
Thank you, Dr. Tatum. Yes, the third main reason for taxation is called repricing, and by this we mean changing the price of a product to a different, generally higher price. This may sound quite strange, but if you bear with me, you'll see that it makes perfect sense. In general, products are allowed to be priced in a free market. That is to say, whoever can provide goods for the lowest price is the most successful. However, there are certain types of goods that we don't allow to go to the free market. In many countries, these are goods like tobacco and alcohol. These goods are subject to a repricing tax, which is used to discourage people from using the product. Also, these repricing taxes help offset the future medical costs associated with the people who use tobacco and alcohol excessively.
You now have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the discussion and answer questions 27 to 30.
Very well. Do you favour higher or lower taxes?
I am a strong proponent of higher taxes. The reason for this is simply that it is easier to make money when you already have money. This gives a massive advantage to those people who may have inherited money or come from rich families, because money is so much easier to gain for these people if used wisely. Taxing them seems only fair and for the greater good. This compensates the poorer sections of society who really have little or no hope to gain financial success.
I understand Dr. Tatham's position, but one has to be wary of the fact that if taxes are too high for businesses, then those businesses will leave the country in favour of countries with lower taxes. Of course, it would be nice if we could legislate a worldwide tax structure, but this is simply not attainable. And I'm sure by the time it becomes attainable, companies will likely have opportunities to leave for another planet with more favourable tax structure.
Yes, you're right, Dr. McPhee. We must always be mindful of staying competitive. It is like a tightrope we must walk between compensating those less fortunate and being able to stay competitive in the market. Because if we fail to be competitive, then tax revenue will dry up, resulting in no money at all for the lower economic classes. So this is an extremely difficult balancing act.
Which leads to my next question. What is the future of taxation?
I believe you will see higher taxes in 50 years than there are today, just as we have higher taxes today than 50 years ago. We will need even more money for projects like high-speed transit, new roads, new technologies. Also, with an ageing population, medical costs could soar in the near future, resulting in higher taxes to support this healthcare system.
I think the future will be a lot like the present, walking the tightrope as Dr. Tatham mentioned. Where that takes us, I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I'd say higher taxes for the reasons Dr. Tatham outlined. However, another important variable to consider is whether free markets can really...
That is the end of section 3. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
All right, students, and always use that half minute to check answers, check spelling, check the instructions, make sure that you're as accurate as possible. So section 3 here was about taxes, and some of our predictions were quite accurate. So the types of taxes and what they're used for. Starts with a little bit of the history of taxation here. The first question says, write no more than 2 words and or a number, and it gives you this condition. If an Egyptian's income was 10,000, how much would be given to the pharaoh? You had to listen and do a little bit of math for this one. So all you really need here is actually just a number. What was it? Arda says 2,000. Carolina says 2,000. Mirzan says 2,500. Jack says 2,000. And Nick Hill says 2,000. 2,000 it was, yeah. So Egyptians had a pretty clear number. They said 20%, right? So 20% of 10,000 equals 2,000. So you had to do a little bit of quick math and put 2,000 into the blank, okay? If you put 20%, it's wrong because it's 20% of 10,000, right? So how much would be given to the pharaoh? The full sentence answer is 20% of 10,000, which is 2,000, right? So the answer is 2,000. 20% is not enough, and it's not accurate to the question. 20% would only be correct if the question wrote how much of an Egyptian's income was given to the pharaoh. How much of an Egyptian's income was given to the pharaoh? 20%. How much was given if they earned 10,000 would be 2,000. Okay. So yeah, you have to do a little bit of thinking. Okay. IELTS is a thinking exam. It's not just testing your English, it's also testing your thinking. So pay really careful attention to the question. Okay, so the first reason mentioned for taxes, they mentioned 3 reasons, and the first one is the most basic reason. We thought about this, we talked about this. Huang Nguyen Tai says it's revenue, and Shaikh agrees, and I agree as well. Yeah, it's revenue. It's to make money, right? So the government uses tax money to operate society, to spend on the operation of society, or to budget for the operation of society. Number 23, the second reason for taxes is known as, and then here we have a comma because this is a definitive clause. So this defines this word here. It means takes money from the rich and gives it to the poor. Kind of like Robin Hood concept, right? Arda says 23 then should be redistribution. Jack, Gurjivan, Carolina, Nikhil, Rashika all agree that taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor is called redistribution. That works unless you print more money and give more money to the rich, right? So, distribution. Okay, and this is where, of course, you have to have good spelling. You have to listen. You should know the word distribute, redistribution. Pay attention to knowing prefix, root, and suffix of words, okay? So if you haven't spent time learning the prefix, root, suffix of words, it's definitely a good idea, okay? The prefix is the first part of the word that usually is some kind of preposition. So here, re means again. Distribute means to give out, and the suffix, the shin, gives the word form, okay? And in this case, it's a noun. So redistribution, to again give out in the noun form, redistribution. Learn the common prefixes, learn many, many different roots, and the common suffixes of words, okay? Very important. So, redistribution. All right. Now, the third type of tax was given in detail with some explanation as a flow chart. And so here you had to complete the flow chart. You had to write the letter A to F. And you had several choices here: revenue, alcohol, redistribution, repricing, general goods, production. You can probably take out redistribution right away because we just talked about that. So now you're down to 5, and you have your product, and then your product goes either this way or this way. So number 24 is a product that's allowed to go to the free market. Okay, so what is allowed to go to the free market? Is it revenue that goes to the free market, alcohol, repricing, general goods, or production? It's really only one word that makes sense there. Arda, Snoozy, Jack say, well, that's just general goods. So TVs, cars, actually cars, maybe not. But most food that we buy, pens, paper, shoes, all of these kinds of products are general goods. And general goods are allowed to go to the free market at a standard cost, okay? All right. And number 25 is the different direction, where it's not allowed to go to the free market. So you have to realize this is a comparison here. So what is not allowed to go to the free market? Revenue, that doesn't really make sense. Alcohol, repricing is doesn't make sense for that. And production, maybe not that one either. Rashika says the one that makes sense there is alcohol. Now make sure you're not writing the word in your answer key, but putting the letter B. Okay, so this type of question in the computer-based exam will likely be some sort of a drag and drop. So you actually have to take it and then drag it and drop it in there. Okay, in the paper-based exam, you have to be a little bit more careful to write the letter B. Okay, yeah, so it's general goods. General goods are allowed to, or subject to some kind of a tax. It's the third type of taxation. So what's that third type of taxation where the government says, hey, this is bad for society. We need to give it a higher tax to pay for the damage that it creates to society. Okay. So what is it? It's D. Yeah. By the way, I'm Canadian. Canadians have some of the highest repricing tax in the world. So for example, a pack of cigarettes in Canada costs almost $20 Canadian. Okay, it's not quite, but almost. I think it's like $18 or $19 for cigarettes. Alcohol in Canada, alcohol has a 52% repricing tax. So you can actually buy Canadian alcohol, like Canadian beer and whiskey, in other countries cheaper than in Canada because of this very high repricing tax. So if you're a person who likes to party, smoke, and drink, Canada is a very expensive place because Canadian healthcare is universal. It means that people in Canada basically get free healthcare. And because of that, alcohol, tobacco, and other types of similar products have a very high repricing tax because they're very expensive because healthcare is supported, right? Does everybody understand how that works? So countries that have higher social service systems like healthcare, education, tend to have higher repricing taxes. That's why Canada has some of the highest repricing taxes in the world. Guess what other countries would have high repricing taxes? Yep, you got it. Some Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, those would also be high repricing taxes, which is good because it keeps consumption of alcohol and tobacco much lower. I've traveled the world and definitely people in Canada smoke cigarettes way less than in many other countries. Okay. All right. United States, you have to pay for your health care. So if you hurt yourself, it's your problem. So they have a much lower repricing tax. Okay. All right. Kind of interesting. And I think for some people, it is important to think about the taxation system for the country that you're going to. Okay. Canada is a very different type of taxation system than the United States. And depending on your personality and how much money you make, on your health condition, that can have a really big impact on which country you choose to live and study in. Okay, if you love to party, if you've got lots of money, the US might be better than Canada. All right. All right. So here we go to the next question, question 27 to 29. Which three of the following are arguments given in favor of lower taxes? Be really careful about this part here. So it says lower taxes, not higher taxes. Okay. So right away, it's easier to make money when you're already rich. We know that for this one, the answer cannot be A, because A is given for higher taxes, not for lower taxes. Okay. Businesses will leave the country if taxed too harshly. So we should have lower taxes, so businesses do not leave the country. Yeah, that looks good, and they talked about that. They said businesses will go to other countries if the taxes are too high. Carolina says the answer should be B, D, and F. Ashishar agrees. Okay, B is definitely one. Let's look at C. Inheriting money requires no hard work. They didn't talk about that. Okay. So again, logic and notes. A country must be able to stay competitive in the global market. Yeah, they definitely talked about that. They repeated the word competitive over and over again. So D definitely looks good. E, a worldwide tax structure can be implemented. That's wrong, right? So the speaker said, nah, it's not possible to do a worldwide tax structure, although I think that's actually what we will eventually need as the world becomes more global. And then F, lower taxes in the end end up benefiting everyone, including the poor. Okay, that was definitely one of the other arguments. So the correct answers were B, D, and F in any order. B, D, F. If you got those, you got 3 points. If you got 2 of them, you got 2 points. If you got 1, you got 1 point. Okay, this is a 3-point question, so each one is worth 1 point. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the last question. Number 30 for part 3. This was kind of a give me question, and that's nice to end on this type of give me question. Number 30, what do the speakers believe about taxes in the future? They will stay the same, they will be lower, they will be higher. It's probably the same as what you think will happen to taxes in the future. So what do you think will happen to taxes in the future? Ashishar says, probably higher. Gurjavan, Nikhil, Jampalat, Manak, Bad Boy, Snoozy, all agree. Yeah. Okay, so IELTS doesn't lie. Okay, so IELTS sticks to the facts, sticks to reality. If in reality the prediction is that taxes will be higher, which is a pretty good prediction, that seems to be usually the case. I very rarely hear governments or societies saying, hey, guess what? We're making taxes half as much as they were last year. Wow, that would be a pleasant surprise. So C, yeah, generally speaking, they will be higher. The speakers will agree on that as well. Okay. All right. So that's section 3. How did you do? So what was your score out of 10 for section 3? Now, if you're looking to get a band 7 or higher, so for band 7 or more, you should be thinking about getting at least, I would say, about 7 of these questions correct. So 7 or more from 10. Okay, that's kind of your goal, 7 or greater. Okay. All right, The Rock says, I got 8 of those. Slinda says, I got 9. Angel says, I got 9. So if you're getting 8 or 9, yeah, that's pretty good. You should be able to do well. As long as you hold out in part 4, I think you'll do well. Yeah, so as long as you're getting over 7. If you're getting under 7, and you may have already lost a few points in part 1 and part 2, then it might become a little bit more challenging to have enough marks for a band 7 or more. Okay. All right. Let's go to part 4. Section 4, they used to say that before 2020. Now they say part 4. Part 4 will have no break, so you have to answer all 10 questions in one go. Okay, it's all one go. This is about Isaac Newton. When you think about Isaac Newton, what do you think about? So when you hear the name Isaac Newton, what do you think about? So again, we want to predict as much as possible. Okay. So we remembered that, part 4 is about Isaac Newton. What do you think when you think Isaac Newton? Okay, so what comes to mind? Rashika says gravity. Shaikh says laws of motion, physics. Yeah, very good. So gravity, physics, laws of motion. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. The apple. Yeah, that really stuck with people, right? The apple on the head. So apple falling on the head. Yeah. All right. Logic. Sure. Force. Yeah. Anuj says maybe a guy with blonde hair. I don't know if Isaac was blonde. I think he got gray in his old age, but I believe he probably wasn't blonde haired. I think he had darker hair. So apple falling on the head. Good. All right. So all of those thoughts have been created in your mind, and now you're ready to listen. So I'm going to go back to our website here at aehelp.com to play the audio for this exam. Again, students, I'm using my headset microphone. I'm using the microphone with a nice speaker. Use 720p. Carolina, if you're in here, maybe you can just make a note of that. So if it's not focused, use 720p resolution and refresh your YouTube page. This is an ultra low latency stream so that we're in real time, basically, without lag. And for some of you, that means you have to see it in 720p to see it clearly. Okay. Also, don't put your answers in the chat. Save them until the end, and then we'll share our answers together after that. We'll give everybody a fair chance. Okay. So I saw a couple people complaining about, oh, it's not clear. It's crystal clear. It's sharp. It's just that the resolution has to be 720p. Okay. All right. So here we go with the fourth and final part of listening.
Now turn to section 4. Take some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listening section 4. You will hear a lecture about English scientist Isaac Newton. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today we are going to discuss the life and achievements of the famous English scientist Sir Isaac Newton. Many consider Newton to be the most brilliant man to have ever lived, and many consider his achievements the greatest ever achieved by one man. Newton himself was not so sure, as he famously told his followers, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." While it may be true that he built upon the foundation of scientists before him, he still managed to see further than anyone else had, and to this day his accomplishments stand the test of time. Isaac Newton was born in England in 1643. He studied at the King's School in Grantham from age 12 to 17. After leaving school, his mother tried to make him into a farmer, but that was not going to be sufficient for young Isaac. A year later, in 1661, on the recommendation of one of his teachers at the King's School in Grantham, Newton was admitted to Trinity College in Cambridge, where he eventually became a teacher 6 years later. Newton is perhaps most famous for his work on gravity. A well-known story says that Newton realized the nature of gravity while he was sitting under a tree and an apple fell on his head. This story may or may not be true, but the underlying principle is valuable. Newton made the astonishing discovery that the same force that makes an apple fall to the earth also makes the earth revolve around the sun and the moon revolve around the earth. Until this time, scientists such as René Descartes and Gottfried Leibniz had believed that the planets moved in some sort of matter, something they called an ether. Newton demonstrated that no such ether was required. Descartes and Leibniz also had little explanation for why apples fall to the earth. Newton's theory accounted for this almost perfectly. During the 20th century, Newton's theory came under attack by the German physicist Albert Einstein, whose theory of relativity was said to replace Newton's theory of gravitation. This is simply not true. Einstein's theory is a landmark achievement in science, but it did not replace Newton's theory, it merely improved it. To picture this, think of a smooth ball, perhaps a billiard ball. In this experiment of the mind, Newton tells us that the ball is smooth. However, Einstein says that the ball has small imperfections, dents, cuts, and scrapes. Who is right? The answer is both of them. Newton is correct on a macroscopic scale. When we look at the ball from a distance, the ball is smooth. However, Einstein is correct as well. The ball does have imperfections. He is correct on a macroscopic and a microscopic scale. Another of Newton's important achievements is the reflecting telescope. Previously, Galileo had used lenses to construct his telescope, but Newton was the first to use mirrors in a telescope. Today's telescopes are almost all made of mirrors as opposed to lenses, which again speaks to Newton's brilliance. There are a number of reasons the mirror is an improvement over the lens in telescopes. First, mirrors do not warp as easily as lenses do, and by that I mean that lenses can lose their shape in hot or cold weather quite easily. Second, telescopes with mirrors take up less space because of their shorter focal distance. Third, telescopes with mirrors can be built far larger because the mirrors themselves can be built larger. An achievement of Newton's that must not be overlooked is Newton's discovery of calculus. Although the discovery was not without controversy, Gottfried Leibniz also claims to have invented calculus at approximately the same time. Nobody really knows the truth, but it is accepted that they discovered it separately. In any case, it was a brilliant achievement by both scientists. Newton died in March 1727, and his body was laid to rest at Westminster Abbey in London, in a famous above-ground tomb. He was 84.
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.
All right, so you have half a minute to check your answers, and in the paper-based exam, you have 10 minutes to transfer them to your answer booklet. In the computer-based exam, you have a couple of minutes to check the answers a bit more, but you do not have that 10 minutes, so that's a big difference. In the paper-based and the computer-based, I still prefer the computer-based myself. I think it's a little bit smoother sailing. So here we go. We're on about the English scientist Isaac Newton. And in the beginning, the professor is introducing some key concepts about Isaac Newton, and we're really listening for this date to identify the location in the audio and to hear this ongoing information after we hear this date. So after about I would say almost a minute, the professor says, okay, Isaac Newton was born in 1643. And then he goes on to say that he studied at King's School in Grantham from the age of, and we have lots of answers here, and most of them are 12 to 17. You have the word to, so you don't need that. Okay, don't put that in your answer sheet. So in the answer sheet, all you need to do here is 12, 17. Okay? All right. Again, in the computer-based exam, it's very clear because you just type 12 and then type 17, or you just drag and drop depending on how the question is presented. All right, so Isaac is studying, he's becoming smarter, and then Isaac leaves school, and Isaac's mother really wants Isaac to be a what? So Isaac's mother attempts to make him what? Some kind of a profession here. It's very odd. It's definitely not what Isaac Newton became. Harwinder says that's a farmer. Yeah, David, that's maybe right for the next question, so careful not to confuse the answers. So it's a farmer. Yeah, so Isaac's mom is like, okay, you're really, really smart. Go be a farmer. Yeah, I mean, maybe Isaac would have had some amazing inventions in agriculture as well had he used his brilliance in that sector, as many people do who are passionate about farming. But Isaac did not want to be a farmer. He rather wanted to be a scientist, even more specifically by today's definition, he wanted to be a physicist. A physicist. Okay, so in 1661, on the recommendation of his teachers, he is admitted to Trinity College in Cambridge. Just think about it. Cambridge was around back then. They did not have an IELTS exam back in 1661, but it's definitely a very old university. 6 years after beginning, it's amazing to think that I'm teaching an IELTS exam in 2021, and it includes information on Cambridge in 1661. Anyway, 6 years after beginning, Newton becomes something there, and I saw many people got this right. So Rashika and Dan Ewan and Harman says that he becomes a teacher there, which makes sense, right? So logically, if you miss this, you would probably guess teacher or professor for this answer. Okay. So Mandeep's guessing physicist, but not really. It's a teacher. I mean, he is a physicist there, but the audio says teacher, right? So you have to put what the audio says. Okay. All right. And then we had this interesting matching the famous historical figure to the correct information. In the computer-based exam, this is usually like a checkbox form. So you have all of these, and then sometimes you have to type the letter into the box. So there's different ways they present these to you, but these are quite popular. Okay. Now, hopefully, all of you have a little bit of history of these characters. So the oldest of these is, I would probably guess, Galileo, and then Descartes and Leibniz, I believe, lived after Galileo, and then it was Newton, and then it was Einstein. Okay. So historically, Galileo was 14th century, if my history serves me right. Descartes and Leibniz were 15th century. Newton is 17th century, and Einstein is all the way up into the 20th century. So definitely for the IELTS, you want to have some global knowledge, such as this. Because it will help you on answering these correctly. Okay. So number 34, believed that planets moved in ether. Ether, to imagine, is like kind of like a liquid. So if you have some eggs moving around in water, that would be like planets moving around in ether. And that was C. Okay. So Descartes, a very, very famous French philosopher, one of the fathers of modern day psychology, and Leibniz, German. So they thought that, it was some kind of an ether, so some kind of liquid like that. All right. And then 35, developed a theory which was thought to replace the earlier theory of gravity. Now, if you know that the two most modern of these scientists were Newton and Einstein, then it's very easy to figure out that this one is D, Einstein. It has to be D. Okay, so I hope everybody got 35 correct. 36, in the experiment of the mind, it tells us that the billiard ball is smooth. That was Newton, so that was B. And then 37 used not mirrors. Pay very careful attention to negatives. Not mirrors, but lenses in the construction of the telescope. Well, hopefully many of you know that the very famous Italian philosopher, astronomer, Galileo was one of the earliest to use complex lens telescopes in the exploration of the night sky of stars. So that one's definitely Galileo. Okay. All right. And it looks like many other students, Juan Corba, and Harman got it. Galileo it is. Okay. All right. If you're doing the academic IELTS exam, I strongly suggest reviewing some key historical figures in European and world history as well. Okay. All right. So they go into a bit more detail about telescopes because not only Galileo, but Isaac Newton also had an important contribution to the advancement in telescopes. Telescopes with lenses cannot be built as large as telescopes with mirrors because large lenses tend to what? This should be some kind of a verb. So some kind of an action verb here. So what happens to lenses? They tend to, Carolina says, lose shape. Yeah. Huang says lose shape as well. Yeah, there's two answers that you could have given here. Lose shape. Or, as one word, warp. They use both words, so either or both expressions, so both are okay. So lose shape, or the accurate verb for losing shape is warp. So if you wrote lose shape, it's good. Or if you write warp, W-A-R-P, okay, warp. Not loose, Rashika, but lose in this case, okay? Lose shape. Okay. Telescopes with mirrors take up less space because of their reduced what? So with Galileo, you often have the image of this very long lens kind of telescope, right? And then mirrored telescopes are usually much shorter. They're kind of round like this, and they have mirrors on the inside. Okay, so mirrored telescopes tend to be short and lens telescopes tend to be long because of their reduced focal distance. That's right, Nantrung. Very good. Okay, focal as an adjective, focal distance. Okay, so reduced focal distance. So not focus, but focal as an adjective. Okay. All right. So that's why if you're into astronomy and you want to spend a bit of money on a telescope, it's a good idea to get a telescope that's using a mirror. Okay? Spend a bit more money on a mirrored telescope. Okay, and our final question, kind of a true-false question, if you will. Number 40, which statement is true? Newton and Leibniz discovered calculus together. Well, Leibniz is in Germany, I believe, at that time. B, Newton and Leibniz discovered calculus separately during the same time period, or Newton and Leibniz discovered calculus separately while working at the same university. That's kind of a weird one, so. Yeah, Snoozy, Samar, very good. This was kind of a give me to finish with confidence, so B was the right answer. All right, good job, everyone. So that's the amazing life of Sir Isaac Newton. What was your score out of 40? So I know many students were here in yesterday's class as well. So you were here for part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. How did you do out of 40? What was your total score? Arda says, I got 39 out of 40. That's a band 9. It is, Arda. Absolutely. If you go to our website, at the bottom of the website, you'll see a link called Score Calculator. You can click on that, and this is at both aehelp.com. And then you see here is the listening. Okay, so Arda said 39, so it gives us the score of band 9. Okay. Dan Ewan says, I got 31. So, Dan, you would have gotten a band 7 for that, okay? Varjot Singh says, I got 29 out of those 40 correct. Oh, invalid score if it's 329. 29 would be a band 6.5. Okay. Kabita Thapa, 28, 6.5. Gurjavan, 32. 32, 7.5. Okay, very good. Shaikh, 37. It's an 8.5. Okay. Kwan La got 34. It's a 7.5. Okay. All right, so you can check out the score calculator along with all of the other listening exams and other exams on the website. Remember, students, that all you have to do to join our premium IELTS course is click that Join Now red button. It's, again, not expensive, so definitely worth your investment, and it is a one-time payment for lifetime access. It gives you access to the website, the apps, so lots and lots of benefit there. That's it for today's class. Tomorrow at the same time, we will have a speaking part 3 class for everyone, and just before that, we're going to have a speaking part 2 class for members. So you're very welcome. Three Doi Gai Chuyen Na Toi. I guess I'm speaking maybe Vietnamese there, but you're very welcome for today's lesson. I appreciate you thanking me. And Carolina, thank you for moderating. Eugen, thank you for the emojis, the clown, especially putting a smile on my face. Okay. No worries, Vivek. Don't panic. I will be back tomorrow. So tomorrow it will be continued. Okay. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone, and have a great start to your weekend. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe, and be confident. Much love to all of you. I'm Adrian signing out from beautiful Victoria. Bye for now.